Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. I appreciate it. As you can tell by the video, this is quite an important update regarding the Dylan Rounds case, i.e. in terms of what's currently happening, current situations of Brenner, as well as refining, clearing up loose ends and providing clarity in detail when it comes to the timeline of Dylan and his unfortunate outcome, okay? As well as some other interesting, important notes in between. And this is all from the latest, newest interview of Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds on the East Idaho News channel on YouTube. If you do want to check the video out, feel free to do so. The aim of today is to analyse what went down recently, to make sense of it, to analyse further if necessary, and most importantly, to be able to map it out officially and correctly of the timeline of the 28th of May, okay? So I'll be bringing it all together today, which will be of use, right? The format, the style, the method, we're going to begin reading through it in the order of when listening to the interview, okay? Tried bullet pointing key notes of what was said by both Justin Rounds and Candice Cooley, and I'll also read out the timeline of the key times, right? But don't worry, if you don't quite understand it, or if you want to see it visually on the maps, we will do so later on in this video. It's all under control. As for people that may join late into this video, feel free to remind them that they can rewind back to the start and truly understand what's going on. So there is a level of seriousness and focus for this video, but it's necessary and there's no harm, okay? Also, before we continue any more, shout out to the previous people last night for their presence and the super chats. It was very good of those individuals, okay? You know who you are. In addition, if you haven't already, feel free to check my previous video out. I'll provide a link down below in the pinned comments section, so you can check that after watching this, okay? What I will say overall from watching this interview, once again, 16, 17 minutes long, not that long compared to other informal ones we've heard of, yet a lot of notes and key information, both currently and recalling from the past, all relevant, all interesting, okay? So that's all good. In addition, I noticed that this time round, Justin, Dylan's father, Justin Rounds, actually spoke more and had the opportunity to. So that was interesting. There was a moment as well where it seemed as if he was about to cry, which is obviously normal, but considering how we've seen body language over time, he's not really shown that, but I guess because of certain discussions about certain evidence kind of triggered it, but more of that will make sense as we do go further on into the notes, okay? So, is everyone ready to begin? Yes? Okay. So, overall, positive interview. Atmosphere, more positive compared to how it was in the past. It started off the interview, key point made by Candice Cooley, and in agreement to Justin, that it's about time in regards response to Brenner finally been charged with the murder of Dylan Rounds, as well as the other charges as well, such as desecration. It's about time. They knew it was going to come, I think a bit beforehand. They were expecting it for a long time, and it's just happened recently. So it's kind of like relief, classified by Candice Cooley as a win, success, positive movements forwards. And yeah, that's true. You think about it, it's just one less load taken off the shoulders, So more focus, more time and effort can be put elsewhere. Because from day one till just recently, it's been trying to find Dylan, trying to spread awareness of Dylan, trying to get the correct people and authorities to do their job, as well as trying to get justice for Dylan and get those charges pressed. That was like 5-6 things all at once. And now a couple of those issues are taken away, which is a positive. The only roadblock at this moment in time is the weather. The only positive with the weather is I guess it can help preserve certain evidence, maybe remains, but because of the length of time it's gone on for, over 9 months, could be pushing it. But as they said, they want to start moving forwards, the family, and when the weather does improve, they want to get back out there and search. Kind of similar to what external searchers have said themselves, right? Like Lance Kelly. Now, we go straight into the timeline, the key times of Dylan, the phone of Dylan, and then the outcome, okay? So we'll read it out right now. It might seem a little bit abrupt, but don't worry. I will reread it out later on in this video on the map, and it'll be all, dotted out, perfectly under control, okay? So Candice Cooley said that around 6:57 a.m. Dylan was at the gate and made a call to Brenner, though from what was said previous, Brenner did not answer the call, okay? At about 7:03 a.m. Dylan was at the grain shed. And then the next key time was at 7:27 a.m. That is the time frame, the timestamp of when the video of Brenner cleaning the gun with the blood on his sleeves occurred, okay? So it's quite abrupt, isn't it? The key detail here, not only was the time revealed, 7:27 a.m. of that video of Brenner, but the location was as well. This video took place inside of Brenner's camper, inside of his place of living. So that's really important, and that's really good to know, because it wasn't that long ago I was questioning about length and location of video. How did it actually stop the video? I'm not quite sure, but I think most of the key questions have been answered very quickly. So that's very good. That I could imagine or picture Brenner maybe sat down, on the bed, on a chair, and then the phone's nearby. What Candice Cooley and Justin did acknowledge was it was kind of like a miracle. It was hard to believe, but also amazing how the camera lens could pick up Brenner doing what he did, I guess because of the angle of the phone and how it was placed, right? But yeah, Nate Eaton said, so basically within 30 minutes of Dylan getting onto the property, in that time span, he was killed. So it was very abrupt. It was almost immediate, right? And Nate was like, how? Why? How could this happen? Candice Cooley responded with, because he snapped. Now, of course, people have said that previous. Shack Lady has used that word. I've used that word, and others have as well. And it does kind of make sense, whether you be looking back at Brenner's past history, how he's reacted, how he might have a short temper, how 1 minute he's like this, then aggressive. Okay, that's one way of looking back and reinforcing it. But I think more importantly, these timestamps really give it away, right? Really give it away in such a small space in time. At first, Dylan was, I guess, I don't know how you'd word it, in a positive, excited attitude to get his grain truck to the shed. And within 30 minutes, Brenner was like, well, I've had enough, and did what he did, right? So, yeah, pretty full on. As said, we will go into that a little bit deeper and show it more visually on the maps later on. But let's move on to the next point mentioned in the interview. Justin Rounds was talking about his experience of when he arrived at the place back then. He said the first time he got there, came across Brenner. Brenner was telling him about how Dylan backed into his horse gate or some kind of pen on site, and it frustrated him at the time. Justin was suggesting that maybe that was the factor which caused Brenner to snap. I mean, it could well be the case. If in the past Brenner snapped because a person left the gate open and his horse escaped, then, you know, something similar to that happening again is, you know, kind of inevitable, right? That Brenner would act out once again, but this time a bit too extreme compared to like how things have gone in the past. But the way Justin was also wording it was, you know, supposedly that happened, or it could have been Brenner himself who did it, because he's how is it worded? He used an insult line, basically calling Brenner an idiot, a douchebag or something. It was kind of funny, that little line there. So there's still kind of got a sense of humour, even though in terms of the bad stuff going on. So yeah, possibility that Dylan backing into a horse gate or something on site, which angered Brenner, which then led to Brenner taking it out on Dylan, and then Dylan being murdered, right? Candice coolly followed in and said that we don't know who parked the grain truck inside of the grain shed, though we know Dylan was able to get the truck to the property. So they were basically saying that Brenner could have been the one that reversed it into the grain shed. Now, why would that happen? Why would that need to be the case? Well, ultimately, I guess it does come down to which exact spot was Dylan murdered. And, you know, you kind of think about it, it does seem to lean more towards the grain shed inside. Now, if it is true that possibility that Dylan did not park the truck in the grain shed, Dylan might have gone into the grain shed to begin with on foot, or he was forced in there. Brenner confronted Dylan and then maybe, well, likely shot Dylan from the front or back, I don't know. And that's why that biological matter, supposedly vomit found on the ground in that area, where the FBI dug it up at a later point, maybe to get soil samples, and maybe to cover that patch up, that area. That's why Brenner may have parked the grain truck inside of the grain shed. Could be reinforced, considering in the past, Candice Cooley in a past interview did say that when the grain truck was analysed for DNA fingerprints, Dylan's DNA came up, Don's DNA came up, and Brenner's, but they weren't quite sure, you know, at what time who handled what, because it was all contaminated. But there's a possibility that maybe Brenner was the last one to operate it and maybe reverse it in, maybe to cover up any evidence that might have been on the ground. You never know. But if that was the case, I can imagine Brenner, you know, moved Dylan out of the way so the truck could be reversed in. And that might have led to Brenner concealing Dylan somewhere nearby temporarily. You get what I'm saying? Small possibility. We have talked about this, right? We have gone through these conditions in my past map analysis videos. If you want to check them out, feel free to do so, okay? Also, referring back to a previous point made about how Justin recalled meeting Brenner when Justin got there, I mean, it didn't seem too suspicious at first, based off like what Justin said, how Brenner was talking things through of what happened and what annoyed him, right? So what, Brenner's cold, he can keep a straight face, he doesn't appear or look guilty. I guess that summarise it to an extent, though maybe some of his undoings, mistakes made, which then led to him, you know, incriminating himself or, you know, being found out as the one responsible. Yeah, but let's just put that to the side. Let's move on to the next key point made within the interview, and this is more relevant, up-to-date information of where things are at or were at just recent. Candice Cooley saying that Brenner pretty much told his defense attorney, I did this, that he was responsible for the death of Dylan Rounds. So I guess that might have, well, I guess that bolstered, pushed forwards the charges being placed on top of mainly more the evidence. But I think the key thing to acknowledge is that Brenner admitted, Brenner confessed to an extent, right? Maybe not directly to Candice Cooley or Justin Round's face, and most definitely not way back in the beginning when Justin was face to face with Brenner. But Brenner did open up to his defense attorney, which is something at least, right? I know some people, viewers, were saying he'll probably be very tight-lipped. He probably will not say anything ever. But Candice Cooley acknowledging that he did pretty much confess to that point. More about that later, so make sure to stick around. Candice Cooley also said pleas were offered, but her and Justin declined them at the time. Then what was also mentioned in the interview that Buck's elder prosecuting attorney needed all the evidence to make a decision on a plea. This part started transitioning into the video recording, which was obviously a key vital piece of evidence which incriminated Brenner, because Brenner was in the shop with Dylan's blood on him. And Candice Cooley was, I think, responding to Ned Eaton's comment about, is there any other material, any other videos out there which are held back? Because I know some viewers were also thinking and questioning that too. And by going through it a bit long-winded, Candice Cooley saying, based on the situation of what Buck's elder prosecuting attorney needed, they wanted all evidence, as much as possible, all of it together. It was shortly after that confirmed that there were no other videos of Brenner or of Dylan. So, the one what we've heard of, that Brenner inside of his trailer, inside, cleaning the gun with the blood on his sleeves. That's it. That's the only video out there. But to be honest, it's more than enough, right? And yeah. Then, moving on, linking, Candice Cooley said that she wanted to test it herself in terms of how could a video recording like that of Brenner have begun in the first place? How did it even happen? And as we've talked about recently, quite a few people were adamant and strong opinionated that it was Dylan Rounds that begun the recording of the video, that he knew what was going to happen, that he wanted to document it just before the inevitable. And now I myself did question it heavily, because it was like, well, if you're going to be in danger and you know it, you shouldn't have to put yourself in that situation. If you can walk the other way, then you should, right? Unless it was on the spot out of nowhere, but would you have enough time to react? So that's why I went into the discussion of a lesser agreed possibility that Brenner accidentally begun the recording, right? And that's how it seems to be, or more likely the case, because Candice Cooley had old iPhones, iPhone 8s, okay? So they're quite old if you think about it, but somewhat relevant to the iPhone Dylan had, kinda. And she basically said that if you got an iPhone and it's in its lock screen, within one swipe you have a video recording based on the old software, okay? Does that happen to my phone? Not really. From my experience, take in mind differing software, it's changed over time. Dylan, if having an older phone, that's probably why, right? When I'm in the lock screen, basically you'll swipe up, of course, but then there are like two buttons at the bottom, and on the right hand side there's a circular button, right hand side of the screen at the bottom, and if you kind of like hold it down and drag, then it will directly take you, like a shortcut, to the camera mode, but you still have to press another button, which is record. Though on older iPhone devices, it may be even more easier to make the mistake of recording, right? Candice Cooley will know to an extent because she's tested it herself with phones somewhat similar and relevant to what Dylan Rounds had at the time. So basically, Candice Cooley saying that Brenner most likely accidentally begun the recording. You know, Brenner got the phone off of Dylan's remains, let's say. Phone is turned on at the time. It makes sense because if Dylan made calls earlier on back at the gate, he probably left the phone turned on, or let's say on standby, lock screen. Brenner picks the phone up, might swipe the screen or the button, depends if he's got big hands or fumbles about, you know, and you accidentally begin the recording there. Brenner puts it in his pocket, I guess, and eventually goes to his trailer, right? So, yeah, it does make sense that, yeah. Moving on, the next point in consensus made both by Candice Cooley and Justin, they said they're confident that they'll find Dylan Rounds' remains without Brenner's help, without Brenner confessing, without a plea made. So, you know, that's a positive, right? You know, some viewers might think, but how? But I can understand it because some of you would have heard me say that, well, whether it be LE or some other organisation that found the original burial spot, right? If they managed to do it then, without Brenner's help, then I'm sure they can do it a second time, right? At least they've got something to go off from, a starting point. You tighten with other evidence that has come along the way, and maybe some important stuff in the background which has not been revealed and can't be, you might be able to piece it all together. But it's good how both Justin and Candice Cooley are in agreement with one another and confident that they'll find Dylan. Because I know that's been said with time, but like by default, you're going to say it because you're going to be hopeful regardless. But it just seems a bit more official, it seems a bit more confirmed, a bit more reinforced now, you think, considering evidence and what's already been found, right? That's why I say it as well. Candice Cooley also said that this summer, so when the weather improves, when they can go back out there searching, Box Elder can't this time be telling organisations to not come in, right? And that's because with Brenner being charged now. So if organisations, other groups want to come on in, I guess volunteer and stuff, help and assist Candice Cooley and Justin, they should be able to without any roadblocks or delays. That the LE can't do anything. In the past, they were able to, and that's why Equisearch was delayed. Certain canine units were delayed, as we've heard, the Bloodhound ones. So, what kind of putting the blame back on the LE, Box Elder County Sheriff's Office, Box Elder County Police Department, for holding back things, for delaying stuff, which could have been done sooner rather than later. So hopefully that clears that up to you, right? So basically, if Brenner was charged at the appropriate time much earlier on, then all these other groups could have come on in sooner, and the whole process in finding Dylan, whether it be the first burial site being successful before Brenner had time to commit desecration, or if not that, just being able to use resources earlier and quicker, hit harder and faster, yeah, the success would have been significantly higher. But I guess the only thing you can acknowledge is that they've been able to still get to this point and now start making progress more than ever, despite how long it's gone on for. So it shows stamina. That's one of the key things. Stamina has always been there. Not talking about coverage on YouTube, but the actual physical hands-on stuff by the people directly involved, such as the family, okay? Next point made, and this actually goes back referring to the timeline, the timestamps, okay, of the 28th. Once again, these timestamps, these times will be talked about again later on in this video on that map analysis, okay? And I did colour code it as well, so you don't get confused. It's under control. Also, welcome if you have just joined or about to join, whether you're new to this channel or returning back, whatever. Feel free to continue watching, or if you want to start from the beginning, feel free to rewind, right? It's all there to watch. It's all there. It's not going anywhere. So, moving back to this timeline, following from what was said just earlier on at that up to that point of the video recording. So, Dylan's phone, and at this point, Dylan is no longer alive, just so you know. Dylan's phone leaves the Grainshed property and goes to Dylan's farm. And this is around 7:43 a.m, okay? A couple of humans were saying the phone of Dylan's never went down to Dylan's farm. You know, why are you including that extra timestamp? Looks like I was right. That's all I'll say. Next point. It said about 30 minutes, Dylan's phone was at the farm area. So basically by 8:23 a.m, the phone returns back to the Grainshed property, roughly in that area, okay, near to Brenner's trailer. You know, some of you will know of this because we have mapped it out in the past, but not timestamp for every single one. But this time we do fill in the blanks, so that's all good. So once the phone returned back to the Grainshed property at 8:23 a.m, it remained there for the rest of the day, following into the evening, when at 2:51 p.m, the phone was dumped in Lucin Pond. Okay? Now that time, 2:51 p.m, confirmed by Candice Cooley and Justin. I've never heard of that timestamp, that timeline time, right, in the past. I was under the impression it was later, but it's been cleared up here, 2:51 p.m. It makes more sense now, considering that previously in the Heavy D interview with the Grainshed, Justin Rounds said that Brenner on the Saturday left his trailer at about 2:31 p.m. So from 2:31 p.m. to 2:51 p.m. Right? Seems a bit more believable instead of a massive wide gap, as I was confused in the past. Okay? So yeah, so 2:51 p.m, phone dumped in Lucin Pond. I assumed that was before going to Don's for the barbecue, right? That's why it makes you think, did Don hear anything? Did Brenner confess anything to Don Haley during that barbecue? It just feels a bit weird, like you've come round, met up with someone, a friend or whoever, you sat down eating just after earlier on killing someone, looking down at your hands. Was anything going through his mind, or was he that cold and that collective that it didn't faze him? I don't know, but maybe Don would. If you asked Don Haley, whilst you're having that barbecue with Brenner, what did he say? How did he look? Did he have any scars, any marks, any blood stains, anything at all? Did he look concerned, or was he just completely normal, straight-faced? That would be the next thing to question, right? But, you know, the main stuff has been filled in here, so that's a positive. Candice Cooley responding back to Nate Eaton, who was asking the question, so, regarding Dylan, his remains, where he's buried at, do you think it's somewhere within the vicinity between the pond and maybe the Grainshed? Because that's where most of the action went down, right? That's where most of the phone pings are located. Candice Cooley said, we think it was. And then later she says, but with Dylan being moved. So I'm assuming Candice Cooley, because she didn't quite explain it clearly this point, but if I had to interpret it, I would say that basically Candice Cooley was acknowledging that Dylan Rounds, at least at the beginning, the first time he was buried, was somewhere within the vicinity of the Grainshed property and the pond area, in between, or more so in one of the two locations directly at the epicenter, right? But then due to that desecration, Dylan may have been moved maybe further afar. That's how I interpret it. I didn't really hear Candice Cooley definitively say that I believe Dylan, his second burial spot where he's actually at, is here. She didn't say that, right? She left it open-ended, which makes sense because you're still in the process of being hopeful in finding Dylan, right? You're not going to know where Dylan is at right now if you're still trying to think and keep hope that he is somewhere, right? Now, the next few points mentioned within this interview, it was kind of referring back to the past, okay, the beginning of this case and how it unfolded. Justin Rounds talking more than ever compared to previous interviews, as said at the start of this video. Justin said that in the early stages of this case, when the police came on in, that whilst Brenner was walking about as a free man when he should have been taken in for such as aggravated assault in 2021, that outstanding charge that was delayed. Brenner was walking around with the LE for days. So I guess maybe walking the police around the property, saying what's what he knows of, which lies were made, obviously, as well as just talking. And it'd be interesting, once again, a point like that, a moment of communication for a couple of days. What, Brenner talking calmly, appearing calm, not suspicious? You'd assume so, with the police not arresting him on the spot. So he couldn't have been giving anything away. So once again, I guess a cold exterior and possibly interior as well. Justin went on to say that the LE, the police, Box Elder County, LE asked us to leave the property because we were upsetting Brenner, right? I assume that ties in line with the search and rescue as well, who were there as well. But the police directly asking the parents, Justin and Candice, to move away because it's upsetting Brenner. Was it upsetting Brenner because Brenner was starting to feel stressed out? That it was getting a little bit too close for comfort? Could that have been the catalyst which then made him commit desecration, or did that happen before that? I'm not quite sure. But it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if the family, if search and rescue, and I guess police as well, remained there all at once. If it was upsetting Brenner, how bad could it have got? What, Brenner got triggered, Brenner snapped and started shooting people at point blank? That wouldn't have done him many favours, just would have made him even more worse, but equally it could have led to more people getting harmed. Or could Brenner have just broke down and confessed on the spot? I don't know what it means by Brenner getting upset, but let me know your thoughts. We can do like a little poll right now. If the family did not leave the property with Brenner getting upset, how do you think it could have ended? Do you think it could have ended in Brenner confessing on the spot, Brenner turning aggressive physically, or another point list down below? No harm in asking, right? Okay. Also, next point mentioned in this interview, that in this process, the LE were watching Brenner during him cleaning out the shed, which was, as we've heard, known as spring cleaning June the 2nd. Now, the way it was worded by Nate Eaton after that point made about Justin being advised back then to move away from the property because of Brenner getting upset, Nate Eaton in that interview followed it up with saying, oh, and that's when you observed Brenner cleaning out the shed. Well, how can you be observing Brenner cleaning out the shed if you've been advised to move away from the property? Is it because they were nearby to the property, further afar, but still looking? Or was that worded incorrectly there? That confused me a little bit in the interview. But regardless, there was at least one set of witnesses present, which was the LE that remained there, right? the LE sat back and watched. They didn't really seem to bother or care. Though Candice Cully did say that one of the sheriffs did confront Brenner at the property and said, "What are you doing?" Brenner replied, "Just doing some spring cleaning." So there was a little bit of questioning, but not much was followed up by it. You know, by the sheriff saying, "What are you doing?" Brenner saying, "Oh, I'm just doing some cleaning up, spring cleaning." The sheriff should have then said, "I'm sorry, but you can't be touching this and that. You can't. You know, this is a crime scene. Can you please refrain back, step back from the property?" But that never happened. It should have happened though, right? Do you agree with that? Yeah? Okay. Moving on. Next point made was by Justin, saying that Brenner, this is referring back to the video, okay, on Dylan Round's phone, where Brenner was in the trailer, okay, post Dylan's murder. This was the point where it seemed as if Justin was on the verge of like almost crying in a way. We don't need to play the clip, but you know, if you've watched it yourself, you kind of takes a pause. It's like a weird like squeak sound or something emitted from him, but maybe I guess holding it back. But there was just one little point mentioned by Justin which made me question, okay? If you know the answer or you want to share your opinions, feel free to do so. In rough quotes, Justin said, "Brenner washing blood off his hands and gun. They edit some of this stuff out." When I first heard it, I thought, what? Edit some of this stuff out? Like, was he whispering it to himself or whispering it to Nate Eaton because Justin was going to swear or say something bad? But when I did keep rewinding it back and forth, I didn't notice a jump cut. I didn't notice any bleeping or censoring, so I don't think Justin meant that. They edit some of this stuff out. What? Edit some of the footage out from this video on Dylan Round's phone. Why, if that was the case, why was it slightly edited? Is it because there's some valuable evidence within it which they can't see, they can't view? Is it too disturbing, too upsetting for them to see it themselves, the parents? I don't know what Justin meant by that. They edit some of this stuff out. The only detail that seemed different to me when Justin said Brenner washing blood off his hands. Out of all the articles and official court documents I've read, not once did it say Brenner cleaning blood off his hands. I've read it as Brenner cleaning his gun whilst blood was on his sleeves. That's all I've heard it as. But if there was additional footage, not a separate video, but the video, what's been talked about, is actually longer in length, but maybe it's been edited down. You know what I'm saying? But there might be an original copy somewhere, and it does show Brenner washing blood off his hands. And that's what my question is. Okay, so we've got like a timestamp, a time frame of, I guess, when the video recording begun, I assume, begun. But how long was the video? That's the only like question I have. Don't know if it can be answered. Maybe it might pop up, but it's just good how most of the questions have been answered on the spot, right? Just recent as well. Kind of good timing, if you ask me. So let me know your thoughts about that video. You know, you think it's edited? You think there might be an original copy, longer, more sensitive? Let me know. But yeah, Justin did say that the video hit him hard, or as he said, video hit me hard. I did get so angry, which is understandable, although most likely the video was accidental, the recording, right? Just watching Brenner sit there, I guess, peacefully or maybe calmly, almost maybe planning it out and maybe talking if there was any audio of him just cleaning the stuff up, getting rid of evidence or trying his best to And then Justin, the father's just sat there looking at Brenner, doing that, looking back at it. Yeah, it does make sense why, you know, a family member, if not all, would get angry watching it. I mean, if Brenner did purposely record the video, which doesn't seem likely anymore, but if he did, then I can imagine that would cause even more frustration. Now, what was the timing of hearing about this video? When did Justin Candice Cooley actually hear about this video? I don't know. Because the bit where it said, I got so angry and I was trying not to reveal anything, you know, basically he had to keep his mouth shut with maybe information he knew of at the time, so he had to hold it together. Was this around the time Justin had that meltdown on Facebook where he was calling out Don Hately, or is that completely unrelated? We don't need to question too much about it, but just let me know your thoughts. Is there a link between finding out about this video recording of Brenner and then Justin publicly getting a bit verbally aggressive on Facebook, if you remember? Or the two separate things? Let me know your thoughts. Following on with what Justin had to say, he then recalled from the past, much further back in 2021. What I'm about to read out to you in summary is what we've heard before, but there's some additional information to it, which provides more clarity and a deeper understanding. It's quite important, this. So Justin Rounds recalling, I guess talking about the Dylan Rounds phone recording of Brenner kind of triggered this memory, because Justin in 2021, whilst watching, I guess, CCTV cameras and audio from his phone in his own shop in 2021, Brenner, Don Hately and Dylan were at Justin's shop working inside of it, right? And Justin said he was in close proximity to the guys as well. As I said, some of you would have heard this before. Reference, it was mentioned the first time in that Heavy D interview inside the grain shed when Justin was recalling this story, okay? But back then, I didn't know that Dylan was present as well. So that's new to me, okay? Brenner, Don Hately and Dylan all in Justin Rounds' shop. I guess doing work on the tarp of the grain truck. I assume repairing the tarp. Guess it can develop holes, it can tear, so maybe do a stitching it, patching it up, possibly. In that time frame, at some point Dylan left. That's what Justin said. I don't know if Dylan left the room or left the actual area to go elsewhere to a different place. But once Dylan left, Justin observed and heard Jim Brenner starting talking to Don Hately in a jealous tone, criticising Dylan for how he handles his equipment. You know, he shouldn't be driving it like this. He shouldn't be operating it like that. When I was younger, I was doing this instead of that. Dylan should know better, or something like that. He should be learning. He should have better control. Basically, Jim was being jealous because I guess Dylan had more than what Jim had at that age back then, right? So it was just like a little sign of that jealousy and that frustration building up, which could have contributed, you know, a year later to the snap mentality. There was already a reason beforehand to despise of Dylan. So I guess in the eyes of Brenner, right? One way of looking at it. The next point mentioned is very important because I did not hear this last time. I guess this was the first time it was brought up. Justin said at the time, upon hearing that from Jim's mouth, his wording, Justin confronted Dylan and warned him, saying, Jim is not your friend, okay? In this recent interview, Justin did say that, okay, I wasn't aware that Brenner was like a violent individual, that he was capable of doing all that nasty, dangerous stuff to Dylan. But because of that jealousy, that toxic tone, being toxic. It's not good influence to have around Dylan. So Justin was protecting Dylan, warning him, advising him to be, I guess, alert and cautious in a sense. So obviously there's a level of care, but at least there's also a level of alertness, considering that humans over time, general public, have criticised the family for not caring or for being completely dumbed down. But from the looks of it here, Justin, was somewhat alert and cautious. Justin was saying that he can't be controlling Dylan of like who he can and can't talk to, but you can at least guide him and, just give him a little bit of tips, a bit of awareness, so he can try and stay as safe as possible, right? But at the time when Dylan was warned by his father, Justin, Dylan laughed it off and said, he's just a jackass or jackass. It's just one of those things. It is what it is. So you could say Dylan was somewhat vulnerable, whilst an older individual, someone who probably is more wiser and knows more, I guess, with life and may have had their own experiences, just trying to teach Dylan in a way, but Dylan laughed it off, which is a normal thing, I guess, because Dylan is young, so, he'll learn through experience, but obviously in a scenario like this, fast forward, you can't learn from it, can you? No. But, Dylan calling Brenner a jackass, his behaviour. So from the looks of it, Dylan wasn't even worried about Brenner. Dylan wasn't aware that Brenner does have a criminal past history. From the looks of it, at least, Dylan didn't seem frightened, which I guess is a good thing, but also it just makes him more vulnerable because he's completely unaware of what Brenner is capable of, right? So there is that. But, just a key event that took place back in 2021, where there was like foreshadowing signs of Brenner, in a way, maybe detesting Dylan. You get what I'm saying? Next point, Candice Cooley then starts speaking, talking about a counterclaim. This is response to that recent Bucks Elder County press release, what I showed and shared with you in one of my previous videos. The bit where it was saying Jim Brenner is a family friend of the Rounds family, Candice Cooley, Justin. Candice Cooley and Justin both said that's incorrect. Brenner is not a family friend. Not a family friend. Okay? So I guess that clears that up. Candice Cooley also said that Don Hately moved Brenner into Lucin. So this is talking about in the past. So like a backstory to how Brenner got to Lucin. Seems differing information to what I've heard of previous. People saying it was Ed Harshberger that brought Brenner to Lucin. But Candice Cooley is saying it's Don Hately that was responsible because Don Hately was already living in Lucin and then asked for Brenner to move on into Lucin from Montello. Okay? So yeah, that pretty much clears that up, I guess. Another key point, Candice Cooley said that Dylan moved into the area when he began working with his farm. So Dylan got there before Brenner did, okay? So you could say it's a bit of a coincidence that Brenner, in a way, followed Dylan around, but not intentionally. And you could say, well, how did they follow each other around? Because Candice Cooley had said previous that before Dylan was even in Lucin, somewhere in Idaho, Dylan had pigs, and Brenner assisted Dylan rounds with the pigs. Interesting, considering, I guess, before that, if I'm correct in saying, that Dylan had pigs as well with Kurt Wadsworth. So although Dylan at one point is in Idaho, Kurt is in Montello, and so is Brenner, they all have worked with each other despite being spread apart. And then eventually in the end, at least 2 to 3 came together in being in somewhat close proximity with one another. But I guess it wasn't exactly planned or agreed on together. It was the likes of Don Haley wanting Brenner to come over into Lucin, right? So let me know, at least up to now, through the information you've heard from Candice Cooley and Justin, is a fair bit of this new information to you? I mean, at least for me, a fair portion of it is new to me, and then the rest is more refining, making it clearer of what I previously knew of. So it's definitely been a helpful interview, this. But now we move on to arguably some of the most important news in the Dylan Rounds case. So hopefully you're listening and focused. Whilst we're still talking in that interview, this recent one, Justin and Candice Cooley, Justin going on saying, I never liked the guy Brenner, never liked him, but I didn't expect him to do what he did later on, yeah. Candice Cooley came in then and then said, with regards to Brenner, Brenner is facing the death penalty. And there's no way of a plea. Like, she said at one point she probably could do a plea, accept it, but there's just no way, just can't allow it to happen considering what Brenner's done. And I guess that video recording as well, being able to see it from almost the point of view of Brenner, I guess that might have been the deciding factor, which is understandable. So, you know, in the past we have discussed that Utah has the death penalty, and it seems more than likely that Brenner will be facing it, okay? Candice Cooley and Justin both agreed that they want to almost like drive it home, so that's what happens to Brenner, which may come as a little surprise to some people in a way. You know, some of you might be thinking, well, you need Brenner who holds the answers, the key to where Dylan is at. And that is true, because within that sentence mentioned above, Candice Cooley said, Brenner said, I'll tell you where the body is. That's it, like the listen with one another and make a deal with the devil. Just to prove it, I'm going to show you a portion of the clip, word for word. Make sure to listen.
What should happen to him if he's found guilty?
Well, right now he's facing the death penalty, and I think we'll end up pushing it the whole way.
I think so too. I don't want to do any pleas.
Presented with the plea, and we've said it publicly many times, you know, if we have to make a deal with the devil to get our son back, we'll do it. And then we were presented with it, and we couldn't do it. There's no way we're going to let that man walk in 5 or 10 years. It's not going to happen.
Did he say, I'll tell you where the body is?
Mm-hmm.
So he has said he knows.
Yeah.
And do you think that if you're patient, he'll tell?
I don't know.
I
truly don't know.
I hope not. I hope we find it, and I hope we can fry him as much as...
So as you heard, saying, I'll tell you where the body is. So it's not happened yet, but it could do. Though, from the opinion of Justin and Candice Cooley, they would rather be the ones themselves on their own terms to be able to find Dylan. And they have said themselves that they feel confident that they will find Dylan. Do any of you feel it's a mistake ignoring Brenner, not making a deal with him, pushing the death penalty, and being confident that you yourself can find Dylan, even when there is a guaranteed or a higher chance opportunity of speeding up the process quicker? Do you think it's risky? I think that's what I'm asking. Let's do a poll right now. Do you feel it's risky that Justin and Candice Cooley are kind of blanking the concept of listening to Brenner, making a deal with him, in that he will tell you where the body is, but he wants something out of it? By avoiding that, do you think that's risky? By just believing in your own ability to find Dylan yourself without the intel, is that a risk? Will it pay off? Yes or no? But you can kind of understand it from both sides. To the outsider who may not be emotionally impacted, you could be like, oh, well, just listen to Brenner, just get over and done with. And then maybe go on with the death penalty. Maybe that wouldn't be possible. Maybe a plea, a deal being made, Brenner confessing, because he's already confessed to murdering Dylan towards the attorney, so it's just about the location now. If a deal was set up, it might mean that Brenner doesn't face the death penalty, that he remains alive, that he might have his sentence reduced. And do you really want that when down the line he could be released and he gets away with it technically? Or he could reoffend and hurt someone else, right? You don't want to take that chance either. You want the person to suffer in a way, or to meet the same justice, the same fate as what Dylan unfortunately went through, which was death. So the same applies to Brenner, I guess, and Isaac, Candice, Cooley and Justin. But what happens if, I guess it depends what order, right? I'd assume that they've got to find Dylan first before Brenner is sentenced to death, right? It makes sense. Because if Brenner was sentenced to death and they didn't find Dylan's remains, that could get messy, because then you can't go back and think, oh, right, let's go and ask Brenner. Oh, wait, we can't, because he's no longer alive. I don't think that's how it works. To be honest, I've heard it in the past, stories, people sentenced to death row, on death row for the rest of their life. Some of them never even make it. Some of them never even, get put down. They just die naturally. So there's always that, right? You can be sentenced to death, but maybe not immediate, if I'm correct in saying. Correct me if I am wrong. But if Brenner received the death penalty, could a deal be made after that or not, if the family weren't able to retrieve Dylan? I'm just thinking of these alternative scenarios, just so you've always got a plan, a backup plan. You always need that, right? But once again, just to reiterate from the beginning and what was said previous, if certain organisations, groups were able to find the first burial site, then there's a chance to might be able to find the second burial site. If there's any evidence in between which could suggest a certain area, a direction, that will massively help, right? So you got to acknowledge that at least. Anything else? Yeah, family remaining hopeful, moving forwards, a new chapter as worded by Candice Cooley. Also, Candice Cooley briefly referring back to the LE, saying how they've known for a long time that Brenner murdered Dylan and that Dylan's out there, yet they didn't bother searching or doing as much as they could and should have done. And I guess on top of that, throughout the summertime of 2022, the LE delaying other organisations stepping on in, delaying things overall. So I can I do understand it, right? Of course, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Do you agree with the points made by Candice Cooley Justin? Your thoughts on the body language? I'd say they seemed a bit more calmer this time. Definitely a lot more calmer. I know you can call out Candice Cooley, but even she seemed a little bit different this time in a more positive way. Justin as well. Justin talking more. Candice Cooley not interrupting him, right? So that's a positive as well. Yeah, it just seemed a bit more efficient this time. Just seemed a little bit brighter in a way, considering what's actually happened, So we don't stop there. What we're going to do now, if you're still here, that's good of you. If you've just jumped on in, welcome. We're going to head on over to Google Earth Maps and just visually tell you the official timeline, timestamps of Dylan and his unfortunate outcome and what happened after that with the phone and where it ended up with the times. Okay, let's move on over right now. So here we are on the map, the 28th of May 2022, the beginning. Dylan woke up to the point of where he was murdered, and then following on with the phone. You'll see different colour codings. We basically got two. The red markers with the ticks are basically of Dylan's whereabouts up to the inevitable, okay? Kind of merges on with the phone and the whereabouts of Dylan's phone post-death of Dylan, which transitions into the blue markers with the stars, okay? So I've tried splitting it between Dylan himself and Dylan Round's phone, where they ended up, okay? So we begin down here. We focus on the red markers to begin with, and it's probably practical if you do the same, okay? So at some point in the day, preferably morning time, obviously, Dylan wakes up. I say before 6:50 a.m. You'll know why in a second when I explain it. So Dylan wakes up. Is he in a rush? I don't know. Supposedly it's rained earlier on, so maybe he might be in a hurry. Just, a race against time to make sure that his grain truck with the seed inside of it is protected and parked inside the grain shed, right? So with Dylan waking up, maybe getting prepared, maybe leaving a bit of food on the side as well, gets in his truck, drives down that long road going west. I'll just speed up a bit, drag. There we go. Passing by sun tunnels, which you do see further here to the left. Turning at this crossroad and reaching the gate to the grain shed. You'll see the gate because it's black, that black line going across, okay? Now, it wasn't worded in the most recent interview, but it was worded in the past, the actual time stamp. So, at 6:51 a.m., first of all, Dylan calls his grandmother, Karen Rounds. Dylan calling at 6:51 a.m., right? So it must have been before that time, earlier on when Dylan woke up. So from Dylan getting from his farm to here, maybe 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, depends if he was in a rush or not. He was able to successfully call the grandmother, basically saying, got to park my grain truck in the grain shed, I'll call you back later, which he never did, right? After ending that call, Candice Cooley saying at about 6:57 a.m, Dylan made a call to Brenner, probably alerting him that he's going to park the truck in the grain shed, maybe as well to do with the gate being locked, I guess, though Brenner did not answer the call. He may have been woken up by it, startled, I don't know, which might have put him in an additional bad mood, you never know. So I guess Dylan had to take it into his own hands and basically open the gate himself with a bit of force, I guess. It's a bit of a flimsy gate, as described by Ellen Berg, near Montello Local, right? There had been other talks. I think it was Badger saying that Dylan called the grain shed owner after calling Brenner. Though I'm not including it in this timeline because Candice Cooley did not state it, okay? I want to keep it basic but as clear as possible. So, after 6:57 a.m, he makes it to the grain shed further down here. There we go. 7:03 a.m, Dylan makes it to the grain shed in his grain truck. He successfully got it to this point. But what happens next? Likely, Dylan is taken out. Brenner kills Dylan Rounds, possibly inside the grain shed from what was found in there, the vomit, supposedly speaking. And the reason why that can be reinforced, that this is around the time of when it actually went down so soon, so early in the day, is because the next timestamp being 7:27 a.m, the video recording on Dylan Round's phone of Brenner inside his trailer, cleaning the gun with blood on his sleeves. So it's telltale signs that Brenner has already done the deed, has already got it over and done with, right? So Nate Eaton's kind of like rounding it up, saying, so within 30 minutes upon Dylan getting here, after making those calls as well at the grain shed, Brenner just kills Dylan in 30 minutes. And then it's over. That's it. That's it of Dylan's life. Harsh, cold, fast, fairly quick, sudden snap, and it's over. And obviously that video recording is most important because not only does it further incriminate Brenner as being the one responsible, the main and sole suspect, right? So then they can be charged. But also with it providing the timestamp, it gives you an idea that what happened to Dylan happened before this video recording, okay? 7:03 a.m, Dylan at the grain shed. 7:27, 27 minutes later, or just roughly rounding it up, 30 minutes later, Dylan's no longer alive. So really, you look at those two markers there, and it says a lot, right? Obviously, the method, if there was any words exchanged beforehand, if Dylan gave a fight or not, or if it was an ambush, a cowardly move, is kind of unknown of. But I guess, let's say the item used, most likely that gun that appeared in that video recording, what type of gun, that's another question in itself. But don't worry, what we are going to do, and I know I said I was going to do it today, but as said, if there's any breaking news, that comes first. So that's why this video popped up first. But tomorrow we can link on and look at the grain shed. Look at this key time frame of 7:03 a.m. to 7:27 a.m. of what actually went down, right? To maybe question, to start the discussion of how this happened, what exactly was used, what exact model or type. Was Dylan prepared? Was there any confrontation? You know, that type of stuff, and looking at the certain crime scenes or scenes that are crime scenes but were never officially treated as them by the LE, okay? So, yeah, this point, 7:27 a.m, Dylan is no longer alive on the 28th of May 2022. The next marker that follows is Dylan Round's phone, but most likely and most definitely in Brenner's personal possession, okay? So I don't know where Dylan is exactly placed, whether he's just dumped in the grain shed or dumped elsewhere in the open, but Brenner himself proceeds to go and visits Dylan Round's farm, which is over that way. Now, how did he get there? That's a good question. Did he use his horse? Did he use his own vehicle, or did he walk there? I don't know. Candice Cooley did not confirm that. Maybe she doesn't know. But we will do a poll right now. Do you think he used a horse, Brenner, his own vehicle, or did he walk? Let me know your thoughts, okay? And make sure to vote. The time frame, the timestamp of when Dylan Round's phone appeared at the farm was at 7:43 a.m. Dylan Round's phone leaves grain shed, arrives here at Dylan Round's farm. Jim Brenner being in possession of Dylan Round's phone, which makes sense. I can imagine Brenner just simply put Dylan's phone in his own pocket and proceeded to go and visit this place. But why? Why did Brenner have to come all the way down here? That's the key question, right? Is it because Brenner wanted to steal stuff, such as the gun, maybe? Or that may have not have been planned? You know, like, if it's true that Dylan's vehicle was used by Brenner to maybe dispose of Dylan, let's say, that explains to why the seat was adjusted while the all-wheel drive was turned on accidentally, unknown to him, maybe. Why the gun and key fob was taken away. in the first place and returned back later, right? Starting to all tie in together, right? And, you know, Brenner, with the height he is, adjusting the seat in Dylan's vehicle too. Is there a possibility that Brenner searched through Dylan's trailer for any additional items, anything of interest, any money whatsoever? I mean, it seems that Brenner is known to steal a little bit from time to time, like such as that .22 rifle, which was at the grain shed property in that other trailer, which wasn't, you know, really his, but he went inside and got the .22 rifle. So he likes searching about, he likes being nosy, and I guess because Brenner knows that Dylan is no longer alive, Brenner can do what he likes to Dylan's property or possessions, right? So, yeah, coming all the way down here. 7:43 a.m. Brenner is at Dylan's farm from the looks of it. Just want to refer back to the previous one. Was there a previous marker? No. Candice Cooley didn't give one. But from the looks of it, 7:27 a.m. to 7:43 a.m. A fair bit of time, right? Based off from the difference of 7:27 to 7:43, does that give an idea of how Brenner did get down here in the first place, whether it be by walking or some kind of transport? Does it kind of lessen the gap? Bit more explainable. I do remember someone previous in my live chat saying to get from Dylan's farm to the grain shed on the dirt road in a vehicle takes about 15-20 minutes or so. Okay. Well, this is kind of roughly around that marker, so that's possible. Yeah. Okay. Let me know your thoughts in addition to why you think Brenner came down here in the first place. Was it to steal, to just search about, or an opportunistic moment to make use of a possession in response to disposing of Dylan, right? I mean, you know, you got the backhoe, which was at Dylan's property, Dylan's farm at the time. So Brenner coming down here would have seen it. So, you know, could that backhoe have been used? Maybe not, because if it's still left at the grain shed to this day, you know, it can't be that important. I'm sure the police would have taken it away if it was. And with the talk of the additional backhoe, which doesn't seem to be anywhere in sight from what we've seen, that's most likely the one. But is there a possibility that two backhoes were at Dylan's farm property at the time when Brenner came down here on Saturday, 28th of May at 7:43 a.m? Is that a possibility? I don't know, because when Heavy D did that flyby over the place post Dylan's disappearance, there was only one backhoe in sight here. And then when Heavy D returned, did a flyby over months later, there was no backhoe here. It was at the grain shed, right? So, you know, you can't really refer to the other one because it's been missing all that time. Right. So the next key timestamp, which was mentioned by Candice Cooley. Candice said, and we'll just mention it now just so it might reveal more to you. Brenner spent about 30 minutes at Dylan's farm. What could you do in 30 minutes? Search about, move stuff about, dig a hole, disturb the land. You know, what's your thoughts? 30 minutes in this area. Because after that 30 minutes was up, Dylan Round's phone made it all the way back to the grain shed property, as you see here, 8:23 a.m. Brenner returns back, most likely. And then, at this point, there's a big pause, a big delay, because the next and the final timestamp, phone ping, is all the way over this way. down here at Lucin Pond, 2:51 p.m. Probably in the process of when Brenner left earlier, which was supposedly said by Justin at 2:30 p.m. to get to here, and then to go on to Don Haley's barbecue, which I believe is... I have to just zoom in and flip the screen for a second whilst I do this, which is somewhere over here in this area. You see the pond, you see that timestamp over there, 2:51 p.m. Phone being dumped in the pond. Okay, and then that was the end. Did anything else happen after that? Most definitely, probably, and most likely, desecration, but probably not on the same day. I feel that might have happened a little bit later on. I want to know your thoughts though. We'll do another poll right now. Apologies if it's too close to the others, but it needs to be done. So get your votes in very quickly right now whilst I talk through the next poll. As for the desecration, the removal of the corpse, removal of Dylan's body from the first burial site, and presumably concealed elsewhere at a different location. At what point do you think that occurred? The same day, the 28th, the 29th, 4 to 5 days later, or more? Feel free to vote. Select which one you think is most likely. Was it because Brenner was pressured? Was it during the time of when Brenner was getting upset because of the parents of Dylan being on site? And he wanted the police to push the parents away, maybe? Or was it before that? I just want to know your thoughts. Okay, so make sure to vote right now. So yeah, although somewhat short, that's basically the official timeline and timestamps of Dylan Round's phone pings, and in more importance, the differentiation between who was in possession of the phone at a point in time. The red markers being Dylan himself, the blue markers being Brenner in possession of Dylan's phone, because at that point Dylan was no longer alive. So hopefully that's clear enough to you. I'll zoom on out for a second. There you go. So I've tried to make it as clear as possible. If you do remember in the past, there may have been a video like this, but missing many timestamps. You get what I'm saying? There was these markers in place, the pings throughout the day, but the times weren't included. But they are now, and they are much more clearer. I don't know if I need to. I'll have to try and look for it, because when I looked at my projects, the original markers I can't seem to find, but that doesn't matter too much. But I need to probably go back on my past videos and just see, did I ever word it as complete timeline? Because if I did, that conflicts with the name of this, doesn't it? So if that is the case, I'll have to reword the old one and say inaccurate or rough timeline, just so people know this is the refined, this is the defined, this is the latest up-to-date timeline with clarity. But in addition, of course, all the notes made and discussed today to do with the latest interview by Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds. I feel it's quite fitting that how this strong information, this level of clarity and depth in a short space of a video, not mine, but East Idaho News Channel 1, was able to clear up quite a lot and provide the depth on that channel. Maybe it's Nate Eaton, the way he asks questions, just the way it's structured, not dragged out it's easy to follow, maintain focus, retention and attention spans because of the length of the video. You know, whilst you've got the informal ones in between, which are good, these East Idaho news ones are the best, at least in my opinion. They were some of the first ones I looked at to begin with when I started looking at all these interviews of the family, right? And I still think to this day they're some of the easiest ones to follow. And aside from the last one that was done recently, which probably wasn't the best, this one definitely made up for it. Let me know if you agree or not. Yes, the case still continues, obviously looking for Dylan. As for questioning all the other people around, you probably could do, but the focus isn't as deep. Like, let me tell you something. If Brenner is willing to tell the family where he put Dylan, I'm sure Brenner, whether it be now or down the line, is also willing to open up and reveal or expose anyone else out there responsible or knows something about Dylan that may have assisted Brenner or something, or covered for him. That's if there is anyone to mention, you know? If you think about it, if Brenner is facing the death penalty, he hasn't really got much else to lose. Maybe he drags other people down with him. And if not, then most likely it's because it's only Brenner responsible. And what I will say once again, whether it be now or much later down the line, the reason why there was suspicion towards other people, even if they may be innocent and may have always been innocent, is because of how they've acted at times. Whether it be denying this, refusing to take that, refusing this, refusing that, showing resistance, contradictions, switching and changing of information, you know, all that. It doesn't help when it comes to first-time impressions, when it comes to people that look at these individuals and they act out. You're going to start questioning. You might start thinking, oh, that person's a bit dodgy. Oh, maybe they can't help it themselves, but, you know, what can you do when it's first-time impressions? It's an important thing, right? So, at least in my opinion, the main focus would be now is both trying to understand the time frame between 7:03 a.m. and 7:27 a.m. in that period of where Dylan was killed. And we'll probably look at that in the next video. And then the obvious thing would be trying to locate Dylan. Were we able to locate him the first time round? Absolutely no, because there was no indication, there was no hints or markers. But most likely there was a reason for that, because the ones that found the first burial spot obviously didn't reveal it public for obvious reasons. So I guess the same will happen the second time round, but what we can do in between is try and make sense of it and just see possible locations, places of interest, right? Like how we done in the earlier days, right? And like with other cases in between. So there's still a few things to follow through with. I do also want to finish off that forum page discussion thing. So might have a few flat days of just going through that. 3 to 4 videos remaining. Might as well finish what we started. Makes sense. I just hope it's not too irrelevant considering what we've heard recently. But I guess I'll just read through it quicker. Just read through it quicker if it says stuff that we already know the reality of. Okay? Yeah, it's fine. It'll be under control. And last but not least, kind of within the Dylan Rounds community, I've heard people saying, where is Doug? Where is No Thanks? What's happened to him? I don't really know, you know? But there was a post made on his community tab. Guess we'll read it now and just see. Because, like, as for Doug, he has been around for some time when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case. Maybe not videos day in, day out, but when it's come to delivering maybe important news or just having a conversation, an interview with Candice Cooley, they've done those live streams, as you know, you would have seen yourself kind of long but informal interviews, right? And you would have thought Doug would have been all over it recently, and maybe with Candice Cooley as well, with what's gone on. And yet that's not happened. It's been very quiet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but before this East Idaho News Channel interview with Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds, wasn't Doug supposed to do an interview with Candice Cooley, but it never happened because Candice Cooley was ill? And then fast forward, she and Justin appeared on East Idaho News instead. And in between that space of time, there's been silence from Doug. Is that correct, the order of that? Well, let's just head on over to Doug's channel and just check his latest community post. So as you see, No Thanks last streamed 8 days ago, and his normal videos as well for about 8 days ago. So there's been a bit of silence in between. People have noticed it. Got a post here by No Thanks 6 days ago. Okay. Right. Let's check. So you know people, your email accounts follow you, OneDrives, Microsoft accounts, etc. If you give access to people like your phone or your old phones or disk drives, etc., people have access to your life. I'm going through a terrible identity theft and gaslighting situation since early 2015. I feel similar to a Megan Walsh at this second in my own kind of way. Things will be changing drastically, so you guys know. Hope to talk with you guys soon. Okay, so some personal stuff going on, so that should explain it to you. Is there anything else down below? Please check out Crime and Justice as my computer needs to be replaced. What's this one? Change in plans. We'll be doing some commentary of this interview. Right, okay. Any comments here? So it's also a technical issue as well. That makes sense as well. You know, if your device, what you use to make these videos, is not usable at this moment, then you can't do the videos, right? Anything else here? Now you can understand why. Okay. Wait, was that? I know, that's someone else. I think there was a reply by someone adding on. Well, I think it was Christine Rose that said everything's okay with Doug, but he'll get back eventually. Oh, wait, Crime and Justice, 3 hours ago. I'm just checking in to tell you that you're awesome, you're loved, and we miss you. Come back soon. All right. Oh. I just thought there was like a response by someone passing it on. No, can't seem to find it. But that just gives a little bit of insight to why Doug is tied up at the moment. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there for now. Fairly deep video in a way. Quite a bit of information talked about, but I feel majority of it flows in the correct order to be able to understand it. And as for some of the other mix and matches of information from the past that was brought back up or refined, because we've kind of heard of bits of it in the past already, it just helps strengthen our memories about it. Okay, so we'll see what happens next. If there is any more breaking news, I feel like there could be a spell now where it gets very quiet once again, which is understandable. Maybe the next thing that happens when Doug gets back to his channel is he might do some kind of informal interview, little update with Candice Cooley, but probably the same things will be talked about as what we've already heard, maybe just referring back to it, like how it's happened in the past where Candice Cooley was just talking about the Ellie at the time and all the past mistakes made, if you remember that, with Doug. So yeah, I think it could get a little bit quiet in between, though there are still a few videos for me to cover and still to keep the case alive. I mean, you can argue that maybe in more recent time, it could be a little bit more alive than previous because of the breaking news and more people only coming back for that. But I'm not about just coming back for the little bits of breaking news. I'm here for the small parts as well, okay? And there is still some videos to cover, and the next one is just as important as this one, okay? So hopefully you're still around by then. It'll probably be like tomorrow or the day after when the video comes. But yeah, hopefully you managed to understand this video. If for whatever reason you're confused or it didn't quite make sense, this video, make sure to check out East Idaho News channel, the channel on YouTube, for the latest interview with Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds. If you do have any questions, any thoughts, opinions, additional points, make sure to leave a comment down below, okay? If you wish to, feel free to like the video as well. And yeah, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night for now.